I'm a complete interloper here. I offered to assist Dr. Mike Ward of Swansea University because he realised that the 80th anniversary of Paul Robeson appearing in the pavilion in Mountain Ash was going to slip past without anybody recognising it. So at very, very short notice, we thought, what can we do? And so the obvious person to speak to was Sean Williams of the Miners' Library, who knew exactly what to do because she's a trustee, along with Beverly Humphreys, who is the chair, I think, of the Paul Robeson Wales Trust. And they had in their keeping this wonderful exhibition. And so it was something that we could do at very, very short notice in Mountain Ash to commemorate this amazing occasion when Paul Robeson sang in a concert in the now demolished pavilion up the road, which people, I think here, some people will remember with fond memories, to commemorate the 33 men who had fought and died with the International Brigade in Spain, and to welcome home those who are coming back. And so this occasion has resonance in all sorts of ways, because first of all, we're thinking about the International Brigade and its relationship with Wales and the way that Welsh people sacrificed for a cause which I'm sure we'd all support. And also what Paul Robeson himself stood for, which I'm sure other people are going to speak on far more learnedly and interestingly than I ever can. But we felt that the things that Paul Robeson stood for are things which people still want to stand for today. And so we felt that it was an important thing to do to hold this exhibition. So here it is, and thank you very much for coming. And with great pleasure and grateful thanks, I'm going to introduce Assembly Member for the area, Vicky Howells, who has said that she will come and introduce the exhibition and open it. And I think she has a particular relationship with this event as well. Thank you, Vicky. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you. It is such a pleasure to have this exhibition here today. And I always find that one of the nicest parts of my role as Assembly Member is being able to connect up people who've got interest in different things. So I'd already been working with Dr. Ward on a number of different social projects when he approached me to say, did I realise that it was going to be the 80th anniversary of Paul Robeson singing in Mountain Ash on the 7th of December this year. And like many people, I think we have heard these stories and they've been passed down through families. My own grandmother attended the concert in the pavilion, and she would spend many hours regaling myself and my mother, who sat at the back of the room there, with the story of that event. So I knew all about it, but I didn't know the precise date. And I think sometimes we need people, perhaps academics from outside the area, to pinpoint those things for us. So as soon as Dr. Ward told me that this anniversary was coming up, I said yes, I would love to do everything I could to help to commemorate it. So it was a real pleasure to link Mike up with the Cynon Valley History Society and with the Cynon Valley Museum, and to help him to find a good venue to host this today. Sadly, Mike can't be with us today because he's sunning us up on a beach in Australia, so don't feel too sorry for him. But it is just so lovely to have this here today, and it's particularly lovely to see the children here from Darren Last School, so that you can see how important an event this was, because in 1938, when Paul Robeson came to Mountain Ash, he was arguably one of the most famous superstars in the world. So you think of a really famous superstar now, someone who's a really good singer and actor, maybe somebody like Will Smith. Imagine if Will Smith came to Mountain Ash and you all saw him perform. He hasn't got as good a voice as Paul Robeson, definitely, but it would be something that you'd be really proud of, to think that someone as famous as that came here, and you probably then tell your children and your grandchildren all about it. But Paul Robeson wasn't, of course, just a superstar, a star of stage and screen. He was someone with really strong, firm political views, views that would make him famous, and views later that would see him fall out of favour with those in power in his own country. And I think that the values that he stood for are values that still resonate and are so important today. So the son of a former slave, he was very talented academically, he was a talented sportsman as well, but he chose to follow the path of acting, of stage and screen, but at the same time held some very, very strong views about equality, that everybody should be equal regardless of their faith, their race, their background, how rich or poor they were, and he fought for those values, and that was one of the reasons why he supported those who went to fight in Spain against Franco's regime. And so he came here to Montinash to commemorate the 33 men from the Cynnon Valley who had fought in that international brigade. And he forged a very strong and unique relationship with the South Wales miners and came back a few times to support them in their fight and struggle for fair wages and fair working conditions too. So it's a really wonderful story of how a man who was one of the most famous people in the world forged a very particular connection with our community. And I think that's something that we should be really proud of and commemorate today. I wish I could stay for the whole of the morning, but unfortunately I'm booked to do an advice surgery on the other side of Montinash at 10:30, so I'm going to have to shoot off. But after the exhibition, if any of you decide you've got any problems that you'd like me to solve, I'll be over at the YMCA until 11:30. But please do enjoy the rest of the morning. It promises to be a lovely event, and I for one will definitely be going to the Cynnon Valley Museum to see the exhibition and spend time looking around all of it, because I won't have time to do that today. So thank you very much, Jan, in the museum, for organising that too. So that's it from me. Thank you.
We'd just like to thank you on behalf of the Proud Valley Project, the South Wales Miners Library, the Paul Robeson Whale Trust. We'd like to thank you very much for giving up your time this morning and coming and speaking to us and opening the exhibition. We're very grateful. Thank you. Thank you. Well, as I say, I'm the librarian of the South Wales Miners Library at Swansea University, and also a trustee of the Paul Robeson Wales Trust. And we're absolutely thrilled that you're all here, and with the support that you have given us to enable this exhibition to be here on display on what is a really important anniversary. I think at the time it was reported that on the 7th of December 1938 the whole evening was a very emotionally charged event, and certainly I feel very emotional today, having met Mrs. Morgan, who as a young girl, probably about your age, actually was there on the evening 80 years ago listening to Paul Robeson sing, and she is fantastic listening to her talk about that. And Mr. James, who has given me a copy of what the pavilion would have looked like when Paul Robeson sang, and this will be added to our collection at the South Wales Miners Library. So if you want to have a look, you can pass it round and have a look and imagine Paul Robeson on the stage there. But thank you very, very much for coming. We have at the South Wales Miners Library at Swansea University, we look after this exhibition, but we also have other materials relating to Paul Robeson, and in particular his links with Wales, which the library is open to anybody who'd like to come and visit. So if by looking at this exhibition, it's whetted your appetite to come and find out a little bit more, please do come down to the South Wales Miners Library or contact me. We also have a collection of material relating to the International Brigades, because of course the event 80 years ago was to remember those men who were killed in Spain. And I'm delighted that Mary Greening from the International Brigades Cymru is here. And Mary has actually left some contact cards. So again, if anybody would like to find out more, do a little bit of research about the International Brigades, contact Mary. Her contact details are here. Or come down to the South Wales Miners Library, or do both. And I think that's enough from me. I'm going to introduce you to one of my fellow trustees, Beverly Humphreys, who's Secretary of the Paul Robeson Wales Trust, who's just going to talk a little bit about Paul Robeson and give a little more insight into the man that we're here to talk about today.
Thank you. Well, I did not expect to see this room so full of people of all generations. It's wonderful that you're all here today. As Secretary of the Paul Robeson Wales Trust, I am very proud that this exhibition for the last 18 years has, in different forms, travelled all over Wales and all over the world. It's been to America and other places too. And I'm so delighted that we are commemorating that momentous night, 7th of December 1938, when Paul Robeson sang here in Mountain Ash. Now, like Vicky, I'm afraid I can't stay for the whole of this morning. I wouldn't normally be dressed like this on a Friday morning at, 10:15, but I have to leave to get to the BBC to present the carol service there in the BBC. Hence, I have come. But I think it's probably good to be festive and to be celebratory on a morning like this. The world today, as we know, is in need of great role models to inspire us, to spur us on, to believe in ourselves and to work for a better future. And Paul Robeson, when you read of his story, he is definitely one of those role models. You've heard a little about him already from others this morning, but he was an African American born in Princeton, New Jersey, 1898, into a world that at that time was rife with racial segregation in America, injustice. And yet, although he was the son of a slave, his father escaped slavery when he was 15 and became a minister. This son of a slave in segregated America became one of the great cultural and political figures of the 20th century. And most importantly, he spent his life trying to make the world a better place. Now, you've already heard his voice, I'm sure, this morning. And it is that voice that for most people is their first introduction to Paul Robeson. What do you think of that voice? Had you heard it before?
Yeah.
Oh, how would you describe it?
Very deep.
Very deep, very rich, very sonorous. Almost people who actually were in the room with him when he was singing, they said it was as though he was singing from the depths of his soul, right from the center of his being. And once it was heard, it was never forgotten. But that voice has much more significance than simply the beauty and the richness and the deepness. Because, as Paul Robeson said himself, my voice is my weapon. Every artist must elect to fight for freedom or slavery. And he said, I have made my choice. And you know, in school, he was black, he was the son of a slave, he was a brilliant scholar and an athlete and a linguist and an orator. And then later in theatre and in film and on record, he was a dazzling star, one of the highest paid, eventually, artists in the whole world. This black American, the son of a slave. And yet all his life, he fought for peace, dignity, and abundance for everybody. Because his father taught him that he mustn't just fight for fairness for his own people, but he must fight for fairness and justice for everybody who is exploited or not treated as they should have been. He graduated as a lawyer and he thought he could change the world, but he couldn't, of course, because, do you know, because he was black, they would not allow him to represent white people in court. So he thought, what can I do? How am I going to change this world? And then, by then he was married, and his wife said, well, you have this beautiful voice. Maybe that's how you can do it. And of course he did. When you read all the details in the exhibition, you'll know how he raised the Negro spiritual to the level of art song. He appeared in films and he tried to change this black Sambo image that so many black people were represented on the screen in film. And you know, eventually, as we've heard, he made this very strong relationship, especially with the South Wales mining community, the people of Wales. And the film that he made here, and lots of the locations are in our valley here, from Mountain Ash in Tonnerefa and Llantrisant. In this film, Proud Valley, he said he was proudest of that film than of any other that he made. And then in 1937, he appeared in the Albert Hall at an event in support of the democratic government in Spain. Now, you've heard about the Spanish Civil War, perhaps, as you've been learning about why we're here today. And in that concert, he made it very, very clear that he would do everything he could to fight fascism. And the following year, and you see, it's easy, isn't it, to say these things. We can all speak and we can all say these wonderful things, but to do something, that's the most important thing. And the following year, he risked his life. He traveled to the war, the Civil War in Spain. He sang for the brigaders there. They were the ones who were fighting fascism. He sang for them in hospitals and in their barracks. And he even went to the battlefront where the bombs and the shells were exploding. And he sang there. And you know what? They had loudspeakers much louder than we've had today. And his voice, as he was standing there, you'll see a picture of him somewhere, standing there, while the fighting was going on. And they had loudspeakers, and people could hear him on both sides of the battle line. And while he was singing, all the guns stopped, and there was nothing to be heard except his voice. And then one of those men who was fighting there from Merthyr, he said later on, but when his voice stopped, the guns, the bombs, and the shells began again. But he had made his stand. There he was, putting his life on the line for what he believed in. Then the following year, December the 7th, 1938, here he was, Mountain Ash at the Pavilion, no longer here, alas. As you know, as Vicky has said, he was here to commemorate the 33 brigaders who didn't come back from Spain, but also to celebrate those who had given so much. And on that day, 30 veterans from the war marched onto the stage 2 by 2. They were followed by a huge contingent of people from the black community in Cardiff, and I am absolutely delighted to tell you that the chair of the Paul Robeson Wales Trust, Harry Ernest, his son Ian is also a trustee, is here with us today. And Harry, if you have time afterwards, he can tell you so much more about Paul Robeson and history than anybody else I know. So Harry, I'm so glad that you're here with us today. Basque children, the refugees from that war, were also here on that occasion. Arthur Horner, the president of the South Wales Miners' Federation, he set the tone of that event. He said, in South Wales, we have always lived and stood for freedom, and we will never stop fighting for it. Remember those words, 80 years ago. It's still important for us today to fight for fairness and for freedom for everybody. So, of course, by this time, he couldn't hide it, could he? Paul Robeson had shown everyone that his artistry and his politics were inextricably linked. And I think, I'm a singer myself and a performer, and soon we're going to hear Martin Joseph, another wonderful man with great convictions and passion. I believe every one of us can do something to make the world a better place, but if we are happen to be in a place where perhaps our voices are heard, then it behoves us. It is so important for us to stand up for what we believe in. Well, lots more to tell you about him. Of course, in the 1950 McCarthy witch hunt in America, which you might learn about when you learn about civil rights in America. They were fine in America when he was just standing up on stage or on a screen, singing and entertaining. But the minute that he started standing on a platform and making what they felt were political speeches about peace and equality and justice, and he did that all over the world, then they accused him of un-American activities. They took away his passport. Imagine that. Now, if you go on holidays and leave this country, you need a passport, don't you, to get anywhere? Imagine if someone took away your passport and said, you cannot leave your country. Also, they refused him rights to sing or appear in public. For 8 years, he was a prisoner in his own country. But you know, the people of South Wales, especially the mining community, they said, we're going to fight against this. And there was a worldwide, you have these campaigns, probably online now we have them, lots of petitions and campaigns online to change things and make things better. Well, this campaign was called Let Paul Robeson Sing. Let Robeson Sing. And the people of South Wales were perhaps the most vocal. They made their voices heard for 8 years. The mining community invited him every year. They knew he couldn't travel, but there was an Eisteddfod. You've all been in Eisteddfods in your school, I guess. Have you all taken part? Well, there used to be a miners' Eisteddfod in the pavilion in Porthcawl. They used to invite him every year to be there. And of course, he couldn't travel. But what they wanted him to know was that he hadn't been forgotten. People were still fighting for him. And Sian and I and Harry, unfortunately Paul Robeson Jr. has died now, but we knew him very well. And he said that knowledge, that people hadn't forgotten him and they were fighting for him, it really helped him through those 8 years. And when they gave his passport back, where do you think was the first place that he travelled to? Yes. Of all the places that he could have gone to, he came to Wales. Because in Ebor Vale, in 1958, there was the National Eisteddfod. And in Iron Devon, someone else I'm sure you've heard about, haven't you? The 70th anniversary of the National Health Service. He was the man who started it. Well, in Iron Devon, with the miners, invited Paul Robeson to come to Wales, to come to Ebor Vale. So many more things happened to him after that. And you will find out when you look at the exhibition. But what I want to tell you with all my heart is that we believe that this exhibition, this story, which is a real life story of a real life man, will inspire new generations. You are the new generation. We want to inspire you to believe in and to fight for peace, for equality, and abundance for all. Because we believe that this is something we all can fight for. All in our small ways or big ways, we can all do something to make the world a better place. We can fight racism. We can fight for human rights and international understanding. We live, whatever our politics, we live under the dark shadow of Brexit at the moment. Whatever the outcome, I hope that each one of us, like this man did, will denounce the insidious tide of racism that has been unleashed, sadly, over the last few years. Because Paul Robeson, he proved that each one of us can play our part in achieving his vision of justice and peace and equality. And you know, he changed the words of a very special song, which you might have heard him singing this morning. It was in a show called Showboat. And he changed the words at the end. He said, I keep laughing instead of crying. I must keep fighting until I'm dying. Old Man River, he just keeps rolling along. Thank you. know how very, very privileged we are this morning to have, is Martin in the room already? Yes, I hope. To have Martin Joseph with us. Now, I've had the great pleasure of working with and alongside Martin for many years now. He has a huge talent as a musician, songwriter, and performer. He has an international career, and the songs he writes glory in expressive and poignant lyrics. But for me, what makes Martin Joseph so special is his personal passion for human rights. He has such a conviction. Always, he wants to be the voice of the voiceless. In his songs, in everything he does, he highlights injustice and inequality. A few years ago, Martin founded his Let Yourself Trust, a fulfillment, I think, of his vision to make the world a better place. Like Paul Robeson, who said, "My voice is my weapon. As an artist, I must elect to fight for freedom or slavery." Well, Martin Joseph has made his choice too. Thank you, Martin. Okay, wonderful, I can stay for that.
Yeah. When I saw Beverly this morning, I thought, crumbs, I'm really overdressed.
No, I wouldn't be dressed like this.
Thanks for your words are very humbling, thank you. It's very honouring to be here. I'm a little worried being that I'm the singer representative of the Paul Robeson gathering, especially at 10 o'clock in the morning or whatever it is. So that helps you with the deep notes. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. I wrote a song with my friend Stuart Henderson from Liverpool about Paul Robeson about 15 years ago, and I've been singing it around the world since then. What saddens me often is when I go and play is that people don't know who Paul Robeson was. In my opinion, he should be mentioned in the same breath as Woody Guthrie, Pete Seeger, or Bruce Springsteen, or Bob Dylan. And sadly in America, there's a big gap, a generational gap, that have never really heard of who Paul Robeson is. And in fact, I was dismayed when I was playing a show in Memphis, Tennessee, and I went to the Civil Rights Museum, and he's not even mentioned in that museum, which is incredible. Maybe that's been put right. That was about 4 years ago. I don't know, but one of my favorite stories of Paul, which you may not have heard, I don't know, but when the government did take away his passport there in America, of course we know he got on the phone and sang to the miners in Porthcawl, to the pavilion there. But there is a crossing between, on the west coast of America, between Canada and America. It's called Peace Arch. It's where the border crossing is. So Canada, America, Peace Arch is where they check your passports. I've been detained there many times by the authorities because I have a guitar case and they assume therefore that I'm whatever, you know. But when Paul couldn't travel, what some of his supporters did was they built a stage right on the borderline there. And as long as he got on the stage, as long as he didn't put a foot into the other side of the stage, he was still in America. And 15,000 Canadians gathered to hear him play. He always found a way. So this is a song, a tribute. It's narrated by a miner from Merthyr Tydfil, who's looking back on the visits of the great Paul Robeson to our country, and in the last chapters of his days, he's looking back and he's remembering the fire in his belly that man put there when he opened his mouth, when he sang, when he brought them hope, when he brought them solidarity. It's called Proud Valley Boy, and I'm very honored to be singing in Mountain Ash this morning. Thanks very much. My name is Evan Merthyr-born, my bloated knuckles dented one, and when the pits were closed by force, sent me on a typing course. It was one of those retraining schemes, a room full of discarded dreams. We sat, we mourned our history, whilst tapping out this elegy. God knows where my Wales is now, the legions of a coal dust brow. Blind in the cages, starved of stars, the photographs in fancy bars. Gone the smell of polished pew, widescreen sorrow on the news, and nothing now is heaven sent. We had a backbone, it got bent. But a dragon came here once, and he shone like ebony, at Mountain Asheneath. Well, he gave us dignity, and a dragon came here once, but back home you cursed his name, and you tried to quench the fire of David and Goliath in one frame. Hell spars where a body shines are now entombed the dripping mines, where father sons escaped alive to be condemned in 85. In visions of a brutal new, we know they did the same to you. Proud Valley boy with prophet's voice, bring back to us the word rejoice. The dragon came here once, and he shone like ebony, Mountain Asheneath. Well, he gave us dignity, and a dragon came here once, but back home they cursed his name, and they tried to quench the fire of this David Goliath in one frame. That voice that told the richest tales, sang the decency prevails, says out loud hope is here. It is hope that cleans the atmosphere of the broken words and bitter breath. Where there is hope there is no death, and beneath us now is sleeping coal. But I got fire in my soul, 'cause a dragon came here once, and he shone like ebony, Mountain Asheneath. He gave us dignity, and a dragon came here once, but back home they cursed his name, and they tried to quench the fire of David and Goliath. And a dragon came here once, but he wouldn't let me fall. He fed us as he sang, as we limped back to Bath Call. Yeah, a dragon came here once, and his heart was all our pain. He was my advocate of hope, and he was my defender in the rain. My defender in the rain. My defender in the rain. Mr. Robeson, sir. I hope that JC and Beyonce know your name. Mr. Paul Robeson, sir. That would be wrong, that would be a crying shame. My old man River. Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Whoa!
One more.
Wow, well, I'm so glad Martin could come, and he just offered to turn up and do this for us. What a wonderful privilege we've had today to hear Beverly and Vicky Hulls and Martin Joseph. I want to first of all just apologise that I did advertise that the Kumbach Choir were going to sing, and very kindly some of them have come along, in spite of the fact that I told them 4 days ago that we couldn't manage to fit them in. Because there have been so many people wanting to speak and to do things, and I realised suddenly how small this room was compared with the number of people that wanted to come. It's a perfect size for the exhibition. It's just that I couldn't imagine fitting 35 powerful Valley's men and all their fans come in the room at the same time. And so that brings me to the other thing I wanted to say was that this occasion has been phenomenal, and I do hope that everybody will take time to look at the exhibition and come back. It's here until the end of today. and tomorrow. And I will be here, and Sean will be here for part of the time as well. So if people would like to come back and look at it, that would be wonderful. And then Jan Bailey from the Cunnan Valley Museum. Tomorrow afternoon we're moving it to there. And from next Tuesday, it will be open down there, or up there, sorry, until Christmas. And they've got a lovely space for it there too. So please tell all your friends and everybody that you know about this exhibition in honour of this absolutely wonderful, wonderful man that we should all remember with humility and gratitude. In order to do this possibly better in this area, because of his links with the Cunnan Valley, Mike and Sean and Jan and I and a few others have thought that maybe next year we might be able to do a bigger event. There's obviously a huge support in the area for this. So if you would like to be involved in that in any way at all, or even just to come along or to make a contribution, I know that there are people here whose fathers and uncles fought in the International Brigade. There are people who have seen the concerts. There are all sorts of people with links to this period in history which should never be forgotten. So if you would like to take part in that in any way whatsoever, please, at the end of the table is a visitor's book, but there's also a sheet where you could put your email address, if you have an email address, or your telephone number if you don't have an email address. And we will contact you if we manage to get something shifting in the new year, which I sincerely hope we will. But, so for now, Sean, should I say anything else? Where are you?
No, it's just thank you all for coming, and we are overwhelmed, yes, and I echo what you said, we're overwhelmed by the support, and we look forward, we hope that you will be involved in our plans moving forward to do something very exciting to mark Paul Robeson and his links with this area. And I think we declare the exhibition open, and there are refreshments, and we look forward to talking to you, and thank you again very much for coming.
Thank you. Diolch yn fawr.